It's 2 o'clock. Georgia said she will not be attending the work session, but she will be here for Bill's committee. Cassie said she's running 30 minutes late, and I don't know about Casey. So we will go ahead and call this work session to order. Would you lead us?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, we have 2 items to cover here in this work session. The first is to review the delegate assembly resolutions for the Wyoming School Board Association. Joe has been asked to be our delegate. We'll discuss those, and then time permitting, we'll just kind of generally go over the agenda for that. Second is just a presentation on the Hathaway requirements, just so all of us are a little more familiar with what that entails and some of the classes. Appreciate you working on that, getting that together for us. So as far as the delegate assembly, so we need to approve the agenda.
Make a motion that we approve the agenda.
Moved and seconded to approve the agenda as presented. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay. Item 3A, the delegate assembly. I asked Joe to kind of lead that discussion about the voting items since he's our delegate.
Okay, thank you, James. The way this assembly works is we'll all meet in the theater at the Ram Coda, and each school district gets a weighted vote. For example, we have 1 vote, and Carbon 2 or Carbon 1, I think, has 2 votes. So does everybody understand what the weighted? So that we're not exactly equal. My 1 vote would, or our 1 vote, would not be equal to Cheyenne's 1 vote.
I think they have 5, is that correct? What the biggest?
So something like that.
Somewhere in that neighborhood.
But anyways, but what we do is we gather together as representatives of each district, and we decide whether we want the Wyoming School Board Association to basically lobby the legislature on these resolutions. So that's the reason that we do this. And there's actually a very short number of resolutions this year, which I don't know whether that's good or bad, but there's only a few. So on page 2, we have 2023.1 curriculum for primary grades. And should I read the thing, or?
We can read.
You can read.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just
We can
give
just
us a
discuss
minute.
it.
I'll give you a minute to go ahead and read it then.
So this one actually has a potential legislative sponsor as opposed to some.
Right.
It's more likely to happen. So basically, it seems like two parts in that rationale. One is to keep some local control over the assessments, and then two is to not have a mandate for foreign language instruction.
Right, and we're talking specifically grades kindergarten through 3. Now, let me address the administrators here. Because I have received feedback from a second grade teacher that happens to be in my family about the assessment problems. You know, that they don't, she doesn't feel that she likes to use her own assessments to figure out where the kid is at. So I'm just wanting some feedback on this resolution. Are you looking at it?
I apologize on that. Which particular section are
It would be the page 2, the first assessment, 2023.1.
Rationale section of it.
Would be the second half of that rationale. It says, given previous concerns over local assessments.
So in regards to this particular statement, my suggestion would be that local assessment should not be selected by the WDE and that we should maintain our control. I agree with the statement. What you bring in with the particular second grade teacher and their comments is that against.
No, they were
They were
for maintaining
Okay.
their own assessments.
Okay. I would agree that at least at the LEA level, at the local level, we should be able to set our own assessments. If you want me going further into that, there'd have to be a lot more work involved for me to give my full professional opinion, and I'm not saying that this is the statement that's been made, but I don't know if I fully agree with individual teachers selecting necessarily their own individual assessments, because we do, and that's something I've always strived for since I started working here, is making it more of a universal across the district. All second grade teachers will be using this, all first graders, etc. But just in the grand scope of things, I agree with this statement that we should have control and not the WDE. WDE can give suggestions for potential assessments to be used, and then we can select from that, which is kind of the nature of the piece of assessment that I've always kind of gone with.
Okay.
This partly, I think, goes back a couple of years ago when they had a controversy in Trumbull County. They had their own assessment, and it was not the one WDE proscribed that particular year, and they got into quite a disagreement with WDE, and I'm not sure. I think WDE ended up winning out, but I mean, I think this is where that's coming from. The districts ought to be able to select their own assessments. The other good piece I like about this is that, you know, if we're going to stress proficiency in reading, math, and writing, then why are we mandating any kind of level of Spanish in K1 and 2? I just think that's never been done well in the years I've been here. The state program of that is called salsa. It's kind of, I don't think it's a very good use of time. What little time is spent on it, it's not even done uniformly across the state anyway. So that's the other piece I like about this one, is it does away with that requirement. I mean, if we're worried about proficiency in English by the end of grade 3, then I don't know that time to try to, unless we're really gonna do it right, which means a lot more money than the state's putting into a Spanish bilingual kind of program, so. That's two pluses of this, is what I'm trying to say,
Would it also take more time?
obviously.
Add to that, I'd argue that the Spanish program they recommend is 100% free online.
They did away with that. In fact, they passed a bill a couple of sessions ago that did away with that requirement, and then it was vetoed by the governor at the recommendation of state superintendent. So none of us could figure out where that came from.
Okay, so the question is, when it comes time to vote, would this be a yay or a nay? Okay. Okay, the next one is health standards, suicide prevention training.
Do any of you guys know, administrators, about if the suicide prevention training is part of the health curriculum now or required part of it?
It is not required for students. There's a component that's required for staff.
But they do,
Yeah, the counselor, do so.
they go like to do
Yeah.
CPR stuff.
So in other words, what you're saying is the counselors go into the classroom.
Doesn't mention anything about what grade this would start or if it would go through high school. Anything like that, so we don't know when it would actually start or end.
I haven't seen grade range or anything.
This one's a little interesting. It's not that this is bad. So it's not that suicide training is bad. That's not. But on the other, yeah, the first one and then the last one that they recommended to. So the other one they recommended to vote against for CRT. They argued against mandating stuff from the state level. And then this one, they're arguing for mandating something from the state level. For whatever it's worth, I'm not saying this is good or bad. It's just they've taken opposite sides of the same argument. I feel like.
it mentions state standards, but it doesn't mention. And it mentions giving local school boards the authority to determine which is the best way to meet those standards, but we don't know what the standards are. How much do you take away from it?
You know what, I'm kind of curious, what would this look like? Would this be like a class, or would this be like an assembly, or would this?
Be part of health.
That's my
It says
point.
part of health, which is part of PE.
So,
More than likely, at least if I could approach this from the standards aspect. Sorry, I was trying to pull the folder on the WD website isn't responding for some reason. So the health standards, which this particular item seems to apply to directly, the health standards are broken up into grade bands. Even though this document doesn't actually state it anywhere, there is something in the rationale there about high school students, but I can't say that guarantees that that would be particular just for high school students. The grade bands are K through 2, 3 through 4, 5 through 6, 7 and 8, 7 through 8, and then 9 through 12. Like I said before, there are no particular suicide standards in those, but I would assume that they fill those in, and then we would incorporate them into our, at least at secondary level, combined PE health courses. There is at least one school in the district, I believe it's up north, where they might teach health separate from PE. Yeah. But
They do one semester of PE. and one semester of which is what I-
oh yeah, oh, I thought everyone was blended. Okay, I'm sick. Yeah, it's not right.
And this is just, you know, the school board, the Wyoming School Board Association would just present this and lobby for this. This is not a breakdown of what it would look like. This is just to ask for them to require local districts to include that in their health curriculum. Like James says, it would be a requirement as of right now. From what you guys have told me is we're already doing it.
One of the things that's interesting to me in here is that, and the rationale, the first thing it starts with, 2 failed attempts to add legislation to expand that act, whatever that is. So they failed to get it through the legislature, and now they're asking to go through the State Board of Education.
If I could throw another opinion in there, and I don't know if this is on anyone's mind, but I feel like this often comes up with anything to deal with suicide prevention. I know that there's very oftentimes a fear that the more we talk about it, that this problem might grow. Statistically speaking, that's never been found to be true. If anything, statistics say the opposite, that the more you talk about this topic, then the better it is for students' health at large, because it's not something that we're hiding or, pretending it doesn't exist by never mentioning it. That's no guarantee, obviously, but I think that's at least valuable to point.
I guess here, the question back would be, you feel it's better to come from whatever the district feels should be put into that and taught to that standard, or is it better to be a state mandate standard?
Is that a question directly for me?
Yeah, and you guys. Dr. Copeland.
I mean, the statistics don't lie about where Wyoming is with the rates. I can't honestly say that if you throw it in the standards that teachers are required to teach, that's going to significantly change what's happening with youth and suicide in Wyoming. That being said, I've always advocated that it's better than doing nothing. I'm not saying we're not doing anything, but if our choice is either apply it to our standards or don't, and don't focus on requiring teachers to teach it, I would rather go with the option where let's make teachers teach it, and hopefully that will at least help the problem, not make it any worse.
And just a different perspective that I would just point out to, just as I mean, these are not requirements, these resolutions are just principles that maybe the SBA is going to support or not, I suppose, based on district input. If the state is going to require health teachers to teach this as part of their standards, I think would need to be some kind of training for teachers on how to do this in a way that would be effective. On the other hand, if we're using our counselors to do it at this point and can either expand or take back as we see fit, then at least they've had some training on how to counsel, how to come at things from that professional background, as opposed to, you know, if I'm a health teacher and I haven't ever been teaching this, and then all of a sudden this is thrown as a standard. And I'm not saying they would not train teachers to so they decide to go forward, but I just would point that out too, that, you know, where do we want to come at this from? Teaching in a health class or counseling from those that are certified counselors. Some of our counselors are actually professional licensed counselors, which we even have more background. And we use them for training the teachers. Past years.
All of
another
our,
thought.
all of our teaching staff is required to undergo up to 8 hours of suicide prevention training.
Which is to look for signs and
Yes.
how to report and who to go to if you see signs. So that's kind of the core of that training, how to recognize the signs of maybe some distress, and then who to go to. But yeah, just some thoughts about it.
Okay, so what do you think, affirm or deny?
I affirm this one. I think if we can get the more people talking about it, like Noel and Dave mentioned, you know, if it shows kids that there is an avenue for help, then if it saves one kid, it's absolutely worth it.
Yeah, I agree. I just wish there was more information on that, on how they were going to apply it. But I'm not against it.
We'll know whether, if they ever draft a bill on that or something. Okay, next one. Which is 2023.3, recruitment and retention of extracurricular and co-curricular staff, parentheses, coaches. Okay, everybody have an opportunity? Okay, my question, and this is probably for the principals, how hard is it to find coaches that meet current requirements identified by the PTSD?
You can't find them. Most of the time, that's why you guys have to approve them pending certification, because you have to get them to go. It usually start out as transitional, which means that they go and get first aid CPR cards, and then they have 3 years to work on getting a certification.
So this resolution, which would loosen up those standards a little bit.
Be appreciated.
This came out of, and you notice here, Amelia Chapman's the one that her district is kind of pushing this, and she reached out through WASA just a few months ago about, they had several examples of how difficult it has been for them. And for example, in their particular situation, they had a former pro basketball, no, maybe it's a golfer, anyways, a professional athlete that said, I'm not doing all this stuff to come and coach high school, but it would have been a great asset could they have used it. Because right now, and Dana knows probably, she could list all the requirements because she has to go through with every coach that we hire and try to, and the ADs too, but go over it with them. But they have to have a psychology training, they have to have
Theory class.
fundamentals of their sport, just pretty onerous requirements, to be honest, and it all has to go through PTSB. So we've had some coaches that have done the transition and then just never finished everything and just said, no, I'm not going to go that much trouble. So anyway, some people are pushing back on that and talking about how important all of these requirements are. So that's just kind of, this is probably just in support of trying to make it easier and more flexible and leaving some of that up to the district. So I would say it would be a good one to affirm, to support.
Okay. Fine.
Yep.
Okay, the next one, 2023.4, social studies curriculum and materials transparency. Okay, already had an opportunity. Now, my question is, 'cause I remember many years ago, I went to the Saratoga High School and asked for the textbook that they used for American history. And the principal gave it to me, loaned it to me actually, and I went home and read it. And so it's not as though the school is hiding anything. But how many parents actually go ask?
Very few. I mean, I don't see any reason, there's nothing bad about this. We're already doing it, so I guess there's no reason to really be against it. I don't know if there are districts that do not make materials available to parents ask.
I believe there are. I believe that districts, for whatever reason, and I would assume it's never malicious in any way. They just don't prioritize something like that, like making available all these documents that we try to do.
I mean, it's not going to add anything to us anyway. I mean, unless they start demanding you post your lesson plans or something. But
The one thing I'd like to point out about this, and I don't know if this has any kind of connection to the Civics Transparency Act, which I have not seen any updates on since the fall, but I'm very strongly opposed to that. I feel like it's way overbearing. Puts a lot of work on teachers that is not necessary. Because that goes beyond, and that talks about teachers providing links and documentation of every single thing they ever use in the classroom at any point throughout the year. This, I feel, is the appropriate nature where we take steps, it's recommended, we take steps of the district, and a lot of it's put on the district shoulders to provide this information that's available to parents. Parents want more information beyond that. That's how we cater to those select few that want greater transparency. They approach us, we're more than happy to provide these things. So if this is at all possible, an alternative to that Civics Transparency Act, much. That's based off of a lot of talks with teachers in our district as well. A lot of teachers we have in our district are not very enthusiastic about that potential.
The way the legislative,
Yes,
I can't remember, it's been a long time since I read it, so.
the way it's
Pretty extensive.
we provided that information to teachers prior to our October 1st in-service day. And there were a lot of individuals who came up to me, and I'm sure other people as well, too, about that.
And mainly just about the additional work.
Okay, well, oftentimes at the delegate assembly, there will be changes to the resolutions and things like that. So, I mean, are we this? I think so, yeah. Okay. But I would want to qualify the affirmation that I'm not putting a load on teachers and, you know, if in the changes to this resolution and the discussion, if it should come up that, look up that, if I can, if you,
I'm happy to provide you a copy.
yes, if you provide me a copy to know what exactly that proposed bill was. Does put it on to actually. You know, right now, we have no problem if somebody wants to know what book we're using. Know what it is, we're not hiding it.
A lot of that information is already on our website to begin with. So
Okay, everybody good with that then? Okay. And then it's 2023.3 critical race theory in Wyoming schools. more time. In statute 21-9-102, it says all schools and colleges in this state that are supported in any manner by public funds shall give instruction in the essentials of the United States Constitution and the Constitution of the State of Wyoming, including the study of and devotion to American institution and ideals, and no student shall receive, okay, then it goes on. But the fact that it stresses the study of and devotion to the American institutional ideals, the CRT and the 1619 project, as I understand them, are diametrically opposed to that. So we don't really need a resolute, we don't need to ban it. Well, I have the question, can you teach without promoting? But then again, I mean, do we teach anything on communism?
We teach well.
Maybe
Just as a form of government.
Yeah, government
They
civics.
talk about all forms,
Yeah.
all the forms of government. So yeah, they teach what it is, but they're not necessarily promoting it.
Right.
They're teaching about it.
Mhm.
Comrade.
So
Yeah, I mean, their rationale is that it should be up to some of that's in standard, and then the local people want to do what they want to do. Obviously, we passed a resolution already.
Mhm.
Not promote it. Doesn't mean it can't be discussed or talked about.
the WSBA recommends that denial is on this one.
Yeah, I'm with.
Deny?
Deny.
Okay. Okay, and then the last thing is standards for school boards. And as I look through these recommendations, we already have them in our policy manual, maybe not in exactly the format that it's shown here. So I don't see why we,
I don't, I guess I don't understand the point of that. Is it, I mean, it's not a resolution or something.
no,
They're just, is that just a,
I'm not actually sure.
I wasn't sure. I saw that there. And I thought, well, maybe they're just putting it up there as a reminder. I wasn't sure what that's about.
Or if they're gonna change the standards. that we-
Well, we have our own policies, so they can't really change them.
No. Our policy is pretty well aligned with the state standards and stuff, so. So I really have no idea why they put that in there.
I don't think it's part of the delegate assembly to me. There's no resolution, there's no, I guess if it's, my perspective is if they're asking for that to be a resolution, I would oppose it. But that's an internal district policy. Not that they're bad. but-
No, as I went through it, I picked out things that we already do most of this anyway.
All right, let's kind of go through the agenda for go over that 5 or 10 minutes, and we can go on to Hathaway presentation portion. for putting it together. Let's, I guess we have the screen packet here. For each of us that says who's coming up. If your reservations are different than what's on the agenda, you know, let Dana know. I think I've already told you about.
And I have made that correction. I apologize. I didn't
No,
put
that's
it on
okay.
this.
I shortened mine to the 17th as well, so I just have one night.
That has been corrected or.
So, talk about this now or later. So right now for one night, we have Dr. Copeland, Paul Clark, myself, Karen, Cassie, and Georgia. For 2 nights, Joe and Nick. So we can maybe carpool a bit if we want to. See when everybody is planning to leave on at those times. And then, so for the first day agenda, some pre-conference sessions. The business meetings at 1:30, and I checked on mine too. That's the delegate assembly is at 1:30. There's other business meetings, but when I looked, the delegate assembly starts at 1:30. And
Maybe
then,
that's the official starting. I
yeah,
want us checking in at 1
okay.
as far as the delegate.
Delegate, okay, sounds good. Yep, probably so. Talk about it. And then we're getting together at dinner at the Ribbon Shop House. The second day sessions, board luncheons, banquets. Third day is the legal update. Basically, which is usually real good. Might be a couple of us there. They have put some stuff in there about travel and mileage. What are you planning? Are you planning to drive your car up there, Jim?
I'm gonna be there at 10. And then probably somewhere back there around. So,
Thursday.
So anybody that's scheduled fit.
At 10. And I'm probably gonna shoot for Wednesday to get there in time for the delegate assembly. So plan to be there by 1 at least, just to keep a flat tire or something. But, and then I'd probably stay, depends on how it goes, through the breakout session. 3. Maybe depends on the agenda, and then come back. So, but I'll have my wife's Suburban, so it's cool too.
That might be coming up from Colorado, so nobody wants to meet me, so I have.
So helpful. So the pre-conference sessions, do we have any additional information on those?
It just came out in an email. Maybe I got that.
Exactly what I was.
In the email, they mentioned that you did not have to pre-sign up
Okay.
for those, that you could just go to whatever you wanted, but I don't recall them being real clear on what.
Joe
they
does have some
are.
more information
Joe
on
does.
that. There's 3 different sessions. So I was just kind of curious what
Maybe
that
they-
looked like so we could decide what time.
If I can go to the office, I can get a copy of this.
Well, why don't I go do that?
Okay.
That's the other. Dr. Copeland will be there by 10 if anybody wanted to ride with him or home, me, whatever. So.
I'm not sure what my plans are yet, but I may be.
Maybe we'll email that back out, kind of what your driving schedule, mine is, so that if people weren't here, they can. See that.
Well, I myself, I plan on making the pre-conference sessions, which means depending on weather, have to leave here, 7 if not a little. But Nick and I are going to doing the 2 nights, so I can offer.
Same thing you wrote.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, anything else on the VSB meeting? No. Okay. Now we will talk about halfway requirement presentations that Dr. Manning put together for us about some of the requirements.
Dr. Manning,
Dr. Manning, sorry.
Are you a
It's not the
doctor
first
now?
time I've done it. It's not the first time I've done it. I just.
see, James just named you a doctor.
Yes, that's how it works.
Very honorary.
Okay, so Mr. Chair, members of the board, I attached a 10-page presentation halfway. I was asked a couple times how long does it take, and I said below 5 minutes. I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing. But
How long?
Dana's going to time below 5 minutes.
You got a lot more time than that.
Not counting questions that you guys might have, but I'm actually going to start on page 2. This is a reminder. Maybe I should have read out this order, but it does reference our graduation requirements. So just to point out, we require 4 years of English, 3 years of mathematics, 3 years of science, 3 years of social studies, and then 1 school year of fine arts, either art, music, or drama. We require other pieces, but none of that has anything to do actually with Hathaway. So then if I go back to page 1, the Hathaway High School requirements to achieve some sort of monetary value are split in 4 different categories. First is the provisional, the $140 max award. That is essentially just a student meeting all of our graduation requirements, as well as taking at least 2 years of final performing arts, CTE, or foreign language courses. The foreign language courses need to be sequenced, so like Spanish 1, Spanish 2. And then they also need to have a halfway GPA of at least 2.5 or an ACT of 17, or a work keys, which is a different version of ACT, essentially for students with academic challenges, of 12. From there, then you get up to opportunity, which is very, very similar to provisional, except even in the amount of award, except it does extend language arts to beyond our, well, in this case, we require 4 years of language arts. So math is extended from 3 to 4 years. However, social studies stays the same. Science is extended from 3 to 4 years. So if you want to be eligible for opportunity, you need to have at least 4 years of science in some regard. And then the fine performing arts, CTE, or foreign language requirements are exactly the same, as is the Hathaway GPA of 2.5. ACT score goes up to 19, and work keeps no longer is applicable. For the performance, we have those 4 years again for language arts, math, science, social studies is exactly the same. The amount goes up considerably, but the only other major difference here really is fine performing arts, CTE, or foreign language needs to be 4 years. And then 2 of the 4 years have to be sequenced. So you can do that beyond just foreign language. You can go CTE, Act 1 and Act 2. If you take band, you take band 1, band 2. They need to be in sequence though, so you can't jump around. Usually you can't really jump around anyways, unless you're an exceptionally brilliant student. In those cases, you know, we just make sure that we're careful so that the student gets the maximum award. And then honors, the max award amount is $1,600. Language arts, math, social studies, science, exactly the same. So is fine performing arts or CTE. Really, it just comes down to that Hathaway GPA. So from performance to honors, it goes to 3 to to 3.5 minimum GPA. ACT goes from 21 to 25 minimum. So those are the general requirements for achieving one of the 4 different parts of Hathaway Scholarship. And then beyond that, I don't know if you want me to go through, but I gave you a list of all the courses we currently have approved for Hathaway course approval with each one of our campuses across the district. So what courses kids can take towards that Hathaway scholarship.
So the Hathaway GPA, does that just mean corrected to a 4.0 scale or?
Yes.
And those levels, so 1680 per semester, like on the honors one, does that cover tuition at UW?
I believe it covers tuition and or books.
But how much is one semester's tuition? You guys know for in-state?
It goes a long way toward,
Yes.
they're also eligible for any other scholarships.
Right, I understand.
Dana knows as a parent.
Tuition range is about 3,500, I believe, if what I recall, 34 to 3,600 per semester. So it does make a nice dent in that for sure. But then books, of course, range kids. They're supposed to budget about 500. But the good thing is that you can still be eligible for all other scholarships as well. So there is certainly, kids can receive this Hathaway plus receive other scholarships. And then if those other scholarships are above and beyond what tuition and books really is, you don't get the credit back from Hathaway, but you can actually get that credit even back from the other paid scholarships, if that makes sense. So it certainly does help. It does not cover 100% of tuition and books, but it covers maybe close to a little less than half.
Yeah, because I just looked on Google to see what if it said anything. It said in-state tuition 5581 per year, but that's 2019, 2020. Oh yeah, it's not quite. So the yeah, that was too fast.
I'm happy to talk about any more details and some of our courses.
We have quite a few kids that qualify, do we not?
Yes, we do. Yes, we do.
I was gonna say, we did some senior thing last year and they all, I wanna say all the kids that, the majority of them had it.
Essentially, if you look at it from the very basic level, provisional, as long as they graduate, as long as we give them a diploma, they've earned at least $840 per semester. So technically speaking, yeah, every kid that graduates is going to get some form of.
Well, they have to get a 17 on their ACTs.
True.
So you have to take the ACT to do it though?
Yes.
They
Yes.
have to take the ACT as a
Yeah,
junior.
it's a state test.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, so there's not really, it's like we're basically telling them they have to get this money. Take the money,
Yes.
please.
I know.
If you do better, we'll give you more money.
And what the fine performance art or CTE or foreign language, I didn't really understand it, how much that the CTE could fill that. I thought you had.
It's different. So in the past, CTE was kind of, it wasn't really regarded as being beneficial for students. But now that they're finally trying to focus on the fact that not every kid is going to go for a university diploma based
Or if
program.
you want to, you can take ag instead of band.
Yes.
Right. Yes, band would have helped me out very much.
If you could call the cows, you could sing pretty well.
No, but that's what I didn't understand. How long ago did that change?
It's been 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, peripherally, that's kind of all those Fun Hathaway, or I'm sorry, Perkins grant things I've talked about, that's always been associated with this in some way. And they finally kind of brought everything together.
The legislature changed that, I think, 2 or 3 years ago, where they changed it from to or in there, where it could be, it wasn't just
That's what drove our
fine.
foreign language numbers was prior to that. To get half the way, highest level, you had to do that.
And that's
sequential stuff there.
why we're
Now
seeing
it's
the-
or, so
Big declines in our Spanish.
spread out.
How much work is it for the counselors to track all that, to turn in for halfway stuff, or is it not?
I don't think it's too much of a challenge. The only real exposure I have is that when I do the senior transcript reports at the beginning of each school year, I need to remind them to put in the performance, or I'm sorry, the halfway scholarship indicators into Power School. But I mean,
We've been doing it long enough now. It's
Yeah.
pretty smooth. It's
Yeah.
not-
Part of it, yeah.
We get something with report cards or something, don't we, too?
I think they have like a graduation track
oh, yeah.
form, and then it also tracks their halfway.
I was gonna say, I thought I read something on
Yeah.
something about it. Obviously very vaguely, but.
We don't really enter in how much they qualify for. The colleges actually do that at their level, but we have to enter in that they've taken the halfway classes, the classes that are approved for halfway on our form, so that at the college, when they go to see what level they qualify for, that it matches.
That system's pretty well already taken care of. All of our classes are halfway approved, have special indicators so that when teachers or when the counselors sign the students up for it, it's right there.
So what does the additional math and the additional science mean? Is that like Chem and Chem 2, or like?
So if you look at our math graduation requirements, I'm sorry, if you look at the halfway indicators, they talk about algebra 1, algebra 2, and geometry. You go into our particular course list for a school. So if I'm looking at Encampment right now, I believe we've got college math problem solving, we've got college algebra, we've got consumer math. Pre-calculus, I'm sorry, it goes on to the next. Oh, there's several here. There's pre-calculus. So there are various forms of different courses that students can additionally take. It varies from school to school, and it varies from year to year. So sometimes other things that some schools don't actually offer consumer math. Part of it depends on student demand.
And some of those upper level are alternating year to year, correct?
Yeah.
Because of the room in the schedule, or the lack of room in the schedule, I should say, for the one math teacher maybe.
When we build a schedule, we start with what the seniors need, what a majority of the seniors need, and then you build it from there. Typically, I'd say they're going to be like a calculus or a pre-calculus or a consumer math of some sort, depending on the group. So just year to year.
Are they required to take the ACTs once or twice?
They're required to only take it once. You give them the option to take it in the fall, which is not a requirement. And they can take that during their junior year. They can also take that their senior additional ACT testing.
Are they doing it in like the fall and the spring?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Just check. I have a current junior in high school.
They're only required-
Spring of your
The spring is only required.
Yeah.
The spring is already required, so he did the one that wasn't required, so that's impressive.
So you can take it again in the fall of your senior year.
Yeah. I was shocked he took it and not required time.
Anything else on that? Questions? Thank you.
A random question, do we let our freshmen take college classes like the college
Not generally. I think there can be exceptions made based on principal counselor feedback. I had a report that also essentially tell the state what classes we open up for, but in terms of college level, like anything with WWCC, at least our rules say that we open them up to seniors first, then juniors. We could extend that beyond that. I don't think we've had an instance since I've been here where we've had enough money laying around and freshman interest that we've gone ahead with that, but I don't think it's impossible.
Do you have some sophomores though, or?
There might be,
They have to,
Yeah.
part of what goes on there is
off the top of my head.
Western Wyoming requirements have them, they have to take the
Oh, yeah,
ACT to be qualified for those, so
Yeah.
they're not gonna get it until they're probably a junior anyway.
There are some prerequisites.
Yeah.
Yeah, course loads that they have to have taken before too, so.
For psychology though?
Mhm.
My
They-
nephew took psychology as a freshman
Here,
in Shoshone.
okay.
Yeah, then
That
It's
Depends on
our
which-
requirements or?
Depends on which community college
WWCC,
district you're in too.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
community college
Their community
requirements.
college is a different one than WW.
There would be Central Wyoming or Western Wyoming.
It's
Okay,
kind of like a
I didn't know
back
the
and forth.
difference, so.
Yep.
All right, thanks. All right, I'm gonna adjourn the work session.